Well, I've read lots of books, tons and tons of books on preaching and sermons and different things. And one of the main themes that kind of come through whenever you read those types of books is how to decide what you're going to talk on next, right? I mean, what's next? Sometimes you can do a topical study of the Bible. Sometimes you can go through and do a exegetical look at one of the books, starting, like we are on Wednesday nights, Romans 1:1, and going through the end of chapter 16 and just taking it a verse or two or three at a time. When you get to Sunday morning, you're trying to decide what to preach on. As a guy who loves the scriptures and loves to get nerdy with them and look at words and do all those studies, I really enjoy going through a book like from beginning to end and just spending some weeks and weeks in that. However, I know that that's not always the most fun way to go about a message for group settings, because if you miss a couple of weeks, you miss a lot, number one. And number two, some people get bored looking at the same book for a couple of months. So then you got the idea of doing topical studies. And topical studies are great. What does the Bible say about X, Y, Z? The problem with that is sometimes you force verses to say things that maybe they really don't say. And topics are as numerous as the sand and the beach, there are just so many. Which topics do you pick? Well, as I've been trying to think about what we're going to talk about here for a few weeks anyway, and what we're going to do, I've kind of decided that we're going to go a couple of different directions. And to start with, we're going to be in the book of Psalms for a while. The Psalms are an interesting book. It's 150 chapters long. So if we were to start at chapter 1, verse 1, and go through 150 verse, I think it's 6 that it ends with, we would be sitting here for many years to get through all of those verses. I'm not going to do that to you. But I want to do the Psalms some respect. Though the Psalms are 150 in length of chapters, they are actually divided into 5 books. And those 5 books are quite interesting as you look at the breakdown of them. The first section of books David wrote, and the second section of books another person wrote, and each one deals with different topics. And as you read them, though, what you find is it doesn't matter which book of the Psalms you're in. It doesn't matter which chapter of the Psalms you're in. What you find is the heart of man being poured out before God. All my life, I shouldn't say maybe all my life, but at least all of my education life, in which I went to Bible college and seminary and did these things, I was taught that Psalm simply means song, and that the Psalms are simply a book of songs that was sang by the Jews. And some of them were sang in aid to worship, and some of them were sung in times of trouble and in times of rejoicing. But as I've studied the Psalms the last few weeks in preparing for this, I have found that the Psalms are much deeper than simply songs. The Psalms are the heart, the blood, the tears, the laughter, and the joys that come forth in a relationship with God. The Jews didn't really look at the Psalms as a songbook, though sometimes they did chant the Psalms. The Jews looked at the Psalms more as a book of prayer, as a book of how do we deal with God. Now, that's an interesting question, isn't it? How do we deal with God as mere mortals? How do we live for Him? How do we please Him? How do we handle His statements and His judgments and His leading in His life? How do we manage our life in light of a God who is eternal? Well, one of the great joys of the book of Psalms is the hope that it gives. And indeed, the Psalms give us great hope. Whenever I do a funeral, oftentimes I'll sit down with the family in advance of the service, and I will say to that family, "Or do you have any scriptures you would like me to read?" And almost always they will say, anybody guess? Psalm 23. Why? Because even though I walk through this valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. By the way, everybody has that memorized in the King James, and once it read in the King James, especially at a funeral. Why? Because there's hope there. Another one that oftentimes gets questioned or recommended is Psalm 121. I lift mine eyes up to the hills, from whence cometh my help? My help cometh from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot to slumber. He who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. And what a blessed hope that gives us, that God is with us even through the most trying of times. But the book of Psalms is a book of hope, because it also gives us a great number of Beatitudes. Do you know what the Beatitudes are? If you listen to the scripture I read at the beginning of the service, you do. Blessed are those, blessed are those, blessed are those, Jesus said. And the reason they're blessed is because there is a reward that comes for being faithful to God, irregardless of what this world may present to you. And so I thought for the next few weeks what we would do is we would look at some of these Jewish Beatitudes, some of the Psalms and what they say about the blessed person. And we'll find that as we look at what the Jewish people would say as they wrote these Psalms about who a blessed person is, Jesus reinstated that in some way for you and I. And what we find out is the same person who is blessed by God in the Old Testament is the same person who is blessed by God in the New Testament, for both point to Jesus Christ. And as we look at what it is to be blessed by God, the life that we must live in order to see that, I find that perhaps we will find some strength and some encouragement and some hope to move on. So if you have your Bibles, open up to the very first Psalm, Psalm 1. Psalm 1 is a beautiful beginning to a beautiful book. Psalm 1 doesn't have an author attributed to it in the text, though most scholars believe that David was the writer of this particular psalm. We don't know that for sure, but it's a pretty good guess. And as he writes this psalm, he shows us what the life of a righteous person is versus the life of a person who is not righteous, of what he calls a wicked person. He shows us what it is to be blessed by God, and he shows us what it is to be cursed by God. He shows us what it is to live the Beatitudes. Psalm 1, beginning at verse 1, says, "How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit at the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. He will be like a tree firmly planted by streams of water, which yield its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither, and whatever he does, he prospers." Do you catch what he's saying there? He says, how blessed. That tells us that this is a beatitude. How happy, perhaps your translation says, and happy is maybe a better word to use there. He's telling us that there is a state of being for the person who is living for God. And that state of being, though maybe not always understanding, maybe not always in control, maybe with questions and struggles, that person is happy in his spirit because he knows that God is leading, and that knowledge is good enough to move us through the life, no matter what it gives us. How happy, he says, is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the assembly of the scoffers. In other words, he's telling us he lives his life different than the rest of the world. Do you notice a progression there? Sin kind of works this way, right? We start off with a simple little standing, and then we sit, and we're walking. All these different things are going on. And it's kind of amazing how this progression that's given to us here, this idea of walking and standing and sitting, is one that we see in life. I got to see this progression put out just yesterday. My boys decided last night or yesterday afternoon that they were going to get Dad. Okay? In our house, you know, we make it very well known. We wrestle and we get each other quite often, right? We have no problems going after one another and basically terrorizing each other in the name of Christian fun, right? As long as nobody crosses the line. Well, yesterday was kind of a busy day in our house. Lester, of course, was gone to the conference, and so it was just us and the kids, and I gave my daughter the monumental task of folding the clean laundry. We're really good at doing laundry. We're not so great at folding laundry. So if we were going to have a moment of hospitality, we would probably fold laundry in advance of you coming. That's probably more information than my wife wanted me to give to you, but that's the reality. And so my daughter, she's busy folding all of her laundry. She's doing this happily, by the way. And the boys are helping me outside, right? They're helping me kind of straighten up the garage a little bit. We're mowing the yard. We're planting some garden. We're doing these things. We're getting our hands dirty. And we were outside for most of the day. And even though Shannon tells us we should do otherwise, we don't wear sunscreen nearly as much as we should. And by the end of the day, we were all kind of red on the arms and on the face, right? And we go in, and I got this great idea that I'm going to quit paying people to trim my dog. I'm going to start doing it myself. That's a great idea. one of my better ones, if I do say so myself. So I bought a pair of dog trimmers, and I told my boys, while I give Benji a haircut, why don't you guys go ahead and get your showers, and then I'll get mine after, and we'll go get some supper. Okay. So they go, and they take their turns, and they get their showers, and I'm sitting there shaving the dog and shaving. The dog is really shaved now, just so you know. If you want to save some money, I'll come do yours too. But anyway, oh, poor dog. Good thing he doesn't look in the mirror. I'll get better with time, but I'll just keep telling myself that. The boys take their shower. I get done with the dog. I throw away the mounds of hair that I trimmed off of him, and I say, I'm going to go get a quick shower, and then I will get ready and we'll go out to eat. So I go and I get in the shower, and I can hear their voices, the plotting, right? The walking with the wicked. They're walking around the house coming up with the plan. They're getting the supplies. They're getting the cups. They're getting the cold water. They're getting their water guns. They're getting more cold water. And then they plot, right? They take that path of the sinners, and they come right on in it, and they stand in the bathroom, and one of them reaches in and turns the water off while the other one opens up the back curtain and throws in cups of cold water. And then they go and they sit together on the other side of my bed. So after I finally get the soap out of my eyes, finish getting cleaned up, and go into my bedroom to get dressed, they jump up from the other side of the bed with their water guns and blast away. Oh, the wicked. But isn't that kind of how it goes? We find a guy and we say, hey, that's a good idea. And then we hang out with them a little bit longer. The next thing you know, we're sitting right there in the mix of them. Here in this psalm, God says, you know what? Blessed are the people who don't give into that kind of lifestyle. Because sometime you might just get the wrong dad wet and he'll get his revenge. That's what the boys found out. But blessed are those who don't live like this. He tells us that the people who don't live like this are kind of like a tree, is what he's going to come down to, that's planted by these streams of water. And he says that this tree, it's going to produce its fruit all the time, and its leaf will not wither. The interesting thing when you read this down in verse 3, he says that when they are planted, that word planted there in the Hebrew can actually means replanted or transplanted. Okay, so you get this idea of this is a person who didn't always live for God, but they came to this realization that it's better to live for God than it is to live for the world. And so God transforms this person into who he would have them to be, and he replants them, if you will, by a stream of water. And he says that that tree goes up and it begins to produce fruit, and its leaves don't wither. God has got protection of this person, because blessed is the person who doesn't live like the wicked do in the world, but blessed is the person who lives for God. The wicked person, though, he says, isn't like this. Verses 4, 5, and 6, look at them. It says, the wicked are not so, but they are like chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. The word wicked there keeps appearing, right? And it says the wicked, they're not anything like the righteous. The righteous people don't live like the wicked. The wicked people live like the wicked. Here's the interesting thing. When we hear the word wicked, we have been so transformed and our minds have been so filtered and directed by the media that when we hear the word wicked, we think of somebody who's really evil, right? We think of maybe a horror movie, and you got the serial killer in the movie, and that's the wicked person. But the word wicked here simply means the person who doesn't live for God. This is a guy who is a nice guy. This is a lady who is a nice lady. This is a person that maybe you even want to be around, but their heart is not right with God. And so they live according to their terms and to their plans, and they're doing it their way. And God says this person isn't like that. Their end is going to be ruin. The version that I'm using today says that their end is going to be a perish, is the word that's used there in verse 6. But the problem is the word perish doesn't really capture it all for us. Hey, Kenzie, would you throw the next slide up, please? If you notice, it says that the way of the wicked will perish. The word there is actually doom, if you will. They're doomed, not because they're exceptionally evil, not because they're going to spend a life in prison, but because they're separated from God. And the interesting thing about this passage is it doesn't say anywhere that God dooms them, that God is the one who brings them to perish, but they do by their own free choices of not living for God. They have this opportunity to live for and to please God, but because they are doing their own thing, their life ends in doom. But blessed are those who live for God. Blessed are those who choose a different way. Happy is the person who sees the importance of living for God. Jesus talked about this some. He talked about this quite a little bit, actually. But in one of the places where maybe he summed up this idea the best is in Matthew chapter 7. In Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, Jesus said these words, "Enter through the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction. And there are many who enter through that. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life. And there are few who find it." You know what Jesus is saying here? He's saying there's two ways that you can live this life. You can live one that leads to a place of destruction, or you can live a life that leads to life everlasting. Which way are you going to go? He says the majority of people, they're going to be on the broad path, right? They're going to be on the path that looks okay to the world, but when you hang out with them, you find out that it leads to their own end result. Again, God doesn't doom a person dooms themselves. A person leads themselves to perish because, you see, they are a person who is following their own path. They're choosing that. He says, but when you choose to live for Christ, when you choose to follow God, the way is narrow. Jesus said, I am the way. There's only one way. When you choose to live that way, it leads to life. So you have a choice to make. Do you want to be a person who is happy, a person who is blessed, or do you want to be a person who isn't? The psalm that we read, it says that that person who chooses to live this life is like a tree that produces its fruit in season. I don't want you to forget that phrase, in season. Because you could be here today and you could be hearing this message and you could be saying, I believe in Jesus, I surrendered my life, I'm living for him, but things don't feel happy right now. I want you to remember that it said that it's like a tree that produces its fruit in season. I don't want you to think that just because you follow Jesus, everything in life is always going to be a picnic. There's going to be a day when there is rain and no picnic, right? There's going to be a time when there is suffering and no joy. There's going to be a time when if a group of ladies spend enough days together, one of them is going to make the other one mad, and now you're going to have to deal with friction. Good thing it was only 24, 48 hours, right? And not weeks. But in season, in time, for you and I, when Christ returns, we see the fruit. We see what it means to be truly happy. And Jesus said, there's two ways. There's two ways. Well, there was an author by the name of Rob Lacey. He passed away a few years ago from cancer. But before he passed away, he did this strictly paraphrase of the scriptures called the Word on the Street. It's not a translation. I'm not telling you to go out and buy this as a Bible. If anything, it's just simply a devotional reading. But I love the way he captures the idea of Psalm 1 because he does it in such a way that it helps us to see kind of what Jesus was saying. There's a broad way, there's a narrow way. What the psalmist is saying, there's the right way, there's the wicked way. He helps us to see it in a way that I never can because I just am not this artistic. He actually writes this out as a rap song. Now, I could stand up here and rap for you, but that probably wouldn't go over too well. right? So I decided to get a little help today, and I have pre-selected all the people up in the balcony to come down here and help me. And just for a moment, if you all would just come down here for a moment, please. It's not going to hurt. We're just going to make fun of you for the rest of the day. So come on down. And you two in the sound room, you're not doing anything right now, so you can come on up here as well. All right. I've written you cheat sheets, so this should be very easy, okay? Come on up, come on up. We got room here. We'll just move Darren back some more. He doesn't read music anyway. All right. Which one of you is the rapper? That's what I need to know. Who here can drop a line? Carson? Carson can drop a line. Carson, you have been selected, okay? This is your cheat sheet. You might want to read this because I have terrible writing. He's laughing because he knows the good book. God's website gets a good long look. He's growing because he's the evergreen by the picture perfect mountain stream. You got that, right? You can do that. No problem, right? So then you two guys kind of come together right here, all right? Don't cover up Carson. Come around Carson. There you go. We want him to be in the spotlight. And you guys, this is your line. And you're just going to be like, who's laughing? Who's laughing? You got it? All right. Can you do it? Let me hear you. Who's laughing? Okay. Well, you got to do it twice, okay? And you got to get the fingers going with it, okay? Who's laughing? Yeah, there you go. Okay. Do what? You've always loved me? Great. All the girls come over here. And you all, I've always loved you too, Aaron. You all are the chorus. You're going to be at the end, and you're going to sing this twice. Okay? He may lean, oh yeah, he may lean, but the wind won't make him crack. You're going to sing that twice, okay? Let's hear it. Let's hear it. One, two, three, go. Perfect. Okay. And that means you're left. You're the main guy. You're not the rapper. You are the person just dropping the truth. Okay? So here's what you have, okay? They're going to go, all right? They're going to go, who's laughing? Who's laughing? Right? And they're going to get their fingers going. And then you're going to answer. The guy that don't turn, no, that's the second one. The guy that don't take no tips from the godless, who takes no trips on the strip poker picnics, okay? That's your line. And then they're going to say, oh yeah, who's laughing? Who's laughing? And then you're going to do the second sheet, okay? And then they're going to go, oh yeah, who's laughing? Who's laughing? Then he's going to drop the rap. And then after he drops the rap, they're going to sing the chorus 2 times. And we're going to learn what it means to be a person who is planted by streams of water. Okay? You got it? So who's laughing? Who's laughing? 1. Who's laughing? Who's laughing? 2. Who's laughing? Who's laughing? Drop the line. Sing the chorus 2 times. Okay? Here we go. Well, whichever one's on top. It doesn't really matter. The poker one is first. All right. So give me the who's laughing? Who's laughing? 2 times.
Who's laughing? Who's laughing? The guy who don't take no tips from the godless who takes the trips on the strip poker picnics.
All right, we're going to start over so that they can hear you. Ready? 2 times.
Who's laughing? Who's laughing?
The guy that don't take tune from the what? Oh, whoops.
2 times.
Who's laughing? Who's laughing?
The guy that don't take no tips from the godless who takes no trips on strip poker picnics.
Who's laughing? Who's laughing?
The guy that don't tune into Filth FM and talks though tough with cynics and skeptics.
Who's laughing? Who's laughing?
He's laughing because he knows the good book. God's website gets a good long look. He's growing because he's the evergreen by the picture perfect mountain stream.
2 times.
Who's laughing? Who's laughing?
He may lean, oh yeah, he may lean, but the wind won't make him crack. He may lean. He may lean, oh yeah, he may lean, but the wind won't make him crack.
All right, give him a round of applause. Hold on, don't leave yet. Here's what they actually said. Who's laughing? Who's laughing? The guy that don't take no tips from the godless, who takes no trips on the strip poker picnics. Who's laughing? Who's laughing? That guy that don't tune in to Filth FM and talks tough with the cynics and the skeptics. Who's laughing? Who's laughing? He's laughing because he knows the good book. God's website gets a good long look. He's growing because he's the evergreen by the picture postcard mountain stream. Who's laughing? Who's laughing? He may lean. Oh yeah, he may lean, but the wind won't make him crack. He may lean. Oh yeah, he may lean, but the wind won't make him crack. 2 more times.
Who's laughing? Who's laughing?
Do you catch what he's saying? Who's laughing? Who's happy? The guy who trusts in God, because his life has a purpose. His life leads to something substantial. Blessed is the man who does not walk, who does not sit, who does not stand, but who lives for God. How are you living? That's the question. Give him a round of applause. You guys can go. Good job, good job, good job. Good job. Next time, pay attention. I won't get you involved in the sermon. Just kidding. They were actually doing a good job today. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesus said it this way. The road is broad that leads to destruction. The road is narrow that leads to life. The psalmist said it this way. Happy is the person who lives for life, who lives for God, because any other way leads to destruction. The question is, how are you living? If you've been living a life that maybe, you put on the show pretty good, you come to church and all that, but you've never really accepted Jesus as your Savior, you're not living for Him, you're what the Bible calls wicked, and you're headed for destruction. But if you have a decision that you need to make that says, you know what, I want to be right with Jesus, we want to give you that opportunity. We're going to stand together. We're going to sing a song. And as we sing, if you have a decision you need to make, if you'd like somebody to pray for you, if you just want to shout hallelujah, we invite you to come forward and do that as we sing this song together.